Alright guys, so here's the review of the Phoibos Delphinus PY055ED, and this is potentially their best watch to date. So I've checked out a few others. If you haven't seen any of them, I'll leave a link to the playlist up in the top and also down in the description. So this is more of a dressier style diver. So I'll quickly pop the watch to one side for a second, briefly show you the packaging in passing. So we've got the Phoibos branded on there, and it is a pretty handy case, so you can actually carry some watches and bits and pieces. And here's the actual watch. So they actually have a few different variations with this one. So we've got different dial options and also different movement options as well. So if you go for this date version, which I've got, that'll come with the Miyota 9015. But if you go for the no date version, that actually has the no date specific 9039. So I do like that they give you the option there, and they also use the specific movements for each. That's not always a given. So I am actually a little bit late getting this video done, so some dial options are already sold out unfortunately. If you check out the link in the description, you can see all the different ones which are still available. But moving on to the dimensions, we've got a diameter of 39mm, thickness of 11.8, lug width of 20, and then the all important lug to lug is coming at a 46.7. So some pretty nice dimensions there. And then when it comes to the weight on the supplied bracelet, that's coming in at 150 grams with all the links included, and then size for my 7-inch wrist, about 141. So seeing as we're talking about it, let's take a closer look at that bracelet, because it is really nicely done. So it's a beads of rice bracelet, and we've actually got different finishing on the different links. So the outer section, that's brushed, and then the actual beads of rice bit, that is polished. It's all really nicely finished, as is the finishing on the whole of this watch. It's one of the standouts with this. So moving on to the clasp, we've got that Phoibos branding on there. I know some people don't like that, I personally quite like it. And then we've got some nice polished chamfers on the edge of that as well. We've got no micro adjust, so if we open it up, we've got a milled clasp. And then you'll see the reason why we don't have micro adjust is because we've actually got an on-the-fly adjustable clasp, which is really nice, works really well. You've probably seen these before, so just push this button, and then we've got a pretty decent level of adjustment there. So you shouldn't have a problem getting the perfect fit. So while we're around here, now let's take a look at the case back as well, because that is really nicely done too. And as you'd expect, we've got that Phoibos logo there, but it is really nicely embossed. And then we've got the usual kind of specs around the outside. So the fact that it's an automatic movement, 200 meter water resistance, and also sapphire crystal, which we'll be checking in a bit. And you might have also noticed that we've also got quick release on the bracelet, which is a really nice touch. So if you do want to swap the bracelet out for something else, you can do quickly and easily. It's just a nice little addition to have. But now let's move on to the head of the watch and talk about that in a bit more detail. And the first thing you're probably going to notice is that really nicely sculpted case, and the way that those crown guards are integrated into it as well. It's really nicely done. It's mainly brushed, we've got that nice polished chamfer, and then we've got that signed crown with that Phoibos logo, which again, some people are going to like, others maybe not. And you can probably also see as well, we've got that interesting design on that bezel. So it's not fully coin edged, it's actually got some little gaps in between, which does look good, but it can cause some little issues, which I will talk about later. And when it comes to that crystal, you might be able to see we've got an ever so slight curve on it. But now let's get onto the dial and talk about that in a bit more detail, because there's some interesting stuff going on with this as well. The first of which being that dial. It is actually textured, and it is also sunburst as well. So obviously, depending on which version you go for, this might or may not be as prominent. On this silver version I have, it's actually quite prominent, and I do really like it. It's just something different. When it comes to the rest of the dial, we've got applied indices, just a printed logo, and then the text just above the date window. Automatic 200 meters. I do like that they've done the date window a similar shape to the indices at the 3 and the 9. Just helps to integrate it a bit better, I think. And then with that second hand, you can see we've got that nice colour on there, the orange matching that orange text of the automatic. So a little splash of colour, but not too much. When it comes to the hands, we've got a nice length on all of them, no issues there. And another interesting thing is when it comes to the chapter ring, you can see we've actually got the minutes on there. And then the only other thing on the dial is that printed minute track. Overall, I think it gives a pretty classy look, which matches the dressier style of this watch. So now, let's check whether we've got sapphire crystal on this, using the trusty diamond selector 2. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so good to see. But now let's get onto the movement and talk about that in a bit more detail. So as I said earlier, there's two different choices of movements depending on which style version you go for. If you go for the date, it's Miyota 9015. If you go for the no date, it's the Miyota 9039. Both of which are high beat, so you get that nice smooth sweep of the second hand. So if we unscrew the crown, show you it in action. Nice grippy crown. Pop it out to the first position, then we can change the date. Pop it out to the second position, second hand stops, so we've got hacking. And then we can just change the time. and then pop it back in, second hand re-engages, hand winding, all works well. If I'm being a little bit nitpicky, you can hear a little bit of rotor noise occasionally when it's on wrist, but other than that, it's absolutely fine. And there's a closer look at that crown, so you can see really nice and grippy, and despite those crown guards, it's still pretty easy to access as well. So I mentioned earlier that we talk about the bezel in a bit more detail, so now let's do that. So it's a ceramic bezel, it's 120 click. So I'll show you the action on that now. Really nice clicky action. No backplate at all. And it's not too light or too heavy either. I think it's pretty much spot on. And then when it comes to the alignment, that is also bang on as well. So the only slight issue is, as I said, there are some bits that don't have that coin edge. So if you do grab both of those bits, you can occasionally slip a little bit, but it's definitely not a major issue. So you're probably wondering now, what's the lume like on this? So let's check that out now and find out. So you can see we've got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up and give it a proper chance. So it doesn't actually light up the dial as it's appearing on camera at the moment. Hopefully my camera will adjust in a second. The lume is as bright as it appears, but it's just not reflecting off that dial, as it kind of looks like it is. So it is nice to see that we've got a fully lumed bezel, not just that triangle up at the top. And when it comes to the consistency between the hands, indices and bezel, initially at least, it's actually pretty good, despite that fairly small surface area they're working with on that bezel. There's no patchiness at all, and we've also got some lume even on that tip of the second hand as well. But the question as always is, what's the longevity like? So let's speed this up now and find out. So initially, as you'd expect, not a great deal of change. But as we keep going on, you will eventually see that some bits do fade a little bit quicker than others. As you'd probably expect, because the bezel is less surface area, that does fade slightly quicker than the hands and the indices, but definitely not as much as I was expecting. So according to the listing, they actually have 15 layers of lume on this. I don't know if that includes the bezel, or if that's just the hands and the indices, but either way, the amount of lume they've got on here is pretty impressive. Still no patchiness at all, and as I say, you can see now the numbers on the bezel are starting to fade a bit quicker, but that lume pip is still hanging in pretty well, matching the indices in the hands. But it's all still really legible, so you definitely won't be disappointed with this lume. It's really usable. So, do you agree after seeing all this with what I said at the start of the video, that this is Phoibos' best watch to date? Perhaps you need to know what the price is before you make up your mind though. So there's actually a discount code available at the moment where you can get 20% off. So including that discount, which runs out on the 20th of December, so if you do want to use it, make sure you're quick about that. It's $360, which is £285, €342. And I personally think, for what you're getting, that's a pretty good price. Especially if you're after something that's a bit more of a dressier style diver. But perhaps you're still not convinced, and you want to see what it's like on wrist first. So we'll do that, and we'll also go over the pros and the cons, so you can make a fully informed decision before you buy one. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. And I think it looks really good. And not only does it look really good, it wears really well too. With that combination of the on-the-fly adjustable clasp, the really nice beaded rice bracelet, it's really comfortable, nice curvature to that case, just hugs and conforms to your wrist. I just love that textured dial and the way it plays with the light. I have to admit I was a little worried when I first got this. I was worried perhaps the hands and the indices were going to blend into this silver dial version, but it's not really been a problem. It's been perfectly legible when I've been wearing it, not had any issues at all. And when it comes to issues, there aren't really many. The one I mentioned earlier about that bezel, that's a very minor one. Perhaps you might occasionally get the two bits that don't actually have some of that coin edge grip on. Perhaps if I'm being really nitpicky, maybe they could have made the hands a touch wider perhaps. But then maybe that would ruin the overall look of the more sleeker, elegant, kind of dressier style diver this is. Let me know what you think down in the comments. But as you can see, I'm kind of struggling to find negatives with this, bar that slight issue with the coin edge bezel. I think it's pretty much spot on of what you'd want for a dressier style diver. You've got the high beat movement, depending on which version you go for. You've got the no date specific one as well. You've got that sapphire crystal, really good lume, on the fly adjustable clasp, nice beads of rice bracelet, which has also got quick release as well, so if you do want to swap it out, you can do quickly and easily. Nice textured sunburst dial. 200 meter water resistance, 120 click ceramic bezel, which again has got a really nice action on it, and is also fully lumed. I personally really like having that date down at the 6 as well. If you are going to go for the date version, that's definitely my preferred position. I like the symmetry of it. Some people might say that the Phoibos branding is a negative, but if you're this far into this review, you're probably not going to be one of those people. And I've personally always really liked the Phoibos branding. I think it looks really cool. So if you are still interested in picking one of these up, don't forget to use that discount code DS20 to get 20% off. And also make sure you do that before the 20th of December, because that's when that discount ends. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.